This portion of the blade used to come across in a fairly straight line, and then there was a variety of really aggressive and paper thin serrations, which last about 8 seconds in the actual world. And the person who owned this previous to me chopped into something and twisted out rather than just rocking out, and actually broke the blade steel. And so I just made a recurve bowie out of it. I was able to get this for pennies on the dollar, and it makes a great car knife. And of course, you can repurpose this vacant void that SOG doesn't bother to put anything in here with a fire creation kit. So there's a bunch of just fire making stuff in a large size breath mints container, which oddly enough fit right in there. So, subsequent to that, going still in chronological order, we had a great Christmas. I was gifted 2 knives. My wife gave me this pretty one. Of course, at that time I was still a little bit in the SOG fanboy mode, and so she gave me this pretty little SOG something or other. I think it actually says the name on here. Fielder. It's got a decent style. It makes for a great distraction blade insofar as it checks none of my boxes, with the exception of these inlays might be G10, but I don't think so. Generally, I'm not a fan of liner locks because they're traditionally weaker. I'm not a fan of the tip down carry. The pocket clip is not movable, reversible, or have any other locations, although it is deep carry. Isn't that sweet? I don't know why everybody doesn't make a deep carry pocket clip. You don't have to shove the thing all the way in your pocket if you still want to have it stick out a little bit. It's super shiny. Again, 8CR 13, which is, again, in my opinion, SOG does not do a good job of heat treating this particular steel because it has the edge retention of a cardboard box. It will cut you immediately, but if it's the least bit moist out, forget it. It is really pretty, and I'll never get rid of it because my wife gave it to me, and she's an adorable lady. This is the only knife she's ever bought me, and good for her. It's not her thing, and I would never want it to be her thing because changing perfection would just be silly. However, this makes a great distraction piece, so you can wear this on the front of your jeans and distract people from where your actual knife might be. The same Christmas, I was gifted a neck knife. Personally, in the Atlantic Canada or in the Eastern Wilderness where there is a great deal of snow in the wintertime, I think a neck knife is a great tool because you can wear it over all of your layers and it's easy to get to. This one again is SOG. I took the liberty of covering up the handle a little bit to make it a little bit more user-friendly. I also did a crazy amount of work on the edge to try and make this thing serviceable. The heat treat on these SOG Instincts is abysmal. A box of donuts has probably better edge retention than the SOG Instinct does. For instance, if you started to do paper tests with this, and let me see, I would say you'd probably get 20 or 30 cuts into your paper test and start to notice some edge rolling and damage. But it is nice to be able to take out, make 1 or 2 cuts like a neck knife is probably going to get used, and then put it away again. I do really like the scabbard. The scabbard is the best thing about this knife by far, although I do think the styling of this knife is quite cool. Can't tell you why, I like the look of it. It's surprisingly good in the hand, although it's only 3 fingers, so I'm losing 20% of my grip strength according to our mentor Lynn Thompson. The jimping is really nice. It's well placed. It's well done. I'm assuming this is your blood groove, but I just enjoy the style of it. I wish the steel was better. I really do. And we'll talk about it here in a minute, but this steel can be much better than it is in this particular knife. But scabbard is fantastic. Anchor points for tying your line on it. The clip can be rotated into any one of these detents with the inlaid steel threads on both sides. It's also got their cool logo. I mean, who doesn't like a skull and a beret? That's, I mean, it's just very nice. But, and the retention, edge retention is nice. It really holds on. Like, you're never going to pull that out of there by mistake. It will also go in backwards with equal retention, but it just doesn't go as deep. So again, it's just, the scabbard is by far the best part of this knife. And it was a gift, and it's cool that way. After that, I was doing a lot of research about cold steel, and so it was time, as much as I like my old style machete, the handle material, I have no idea what it's made out of. It must be natural material in some way, because when it gets moist, it starts to swell and flake off. And so it just seemed wrong to really abuse this in the field, using it all 4 seasons. It's a great summertime tool, clearing grass and that sort of thing. It's ridiculous in brush. It kind of chops through alders as big as your arm, like they're not even there. It's as close to that lightsaber experience with a machete as I've ever had. But I didn't want to ruin the handle. Frankly, I was looking for something that appealed to my personal aesthetic, which is impractical in some people's view. And so I decided to upgrade and go to cold steel again. Cold steel machetes are very affordable. They come in every shape under the sun. This is their wakizashi. I almost bought the two-handed Latin machete, which would probably be more practical because there's more meat at the tip, so there'd be more mass, so it'd do better cutting. And it's also two-handed, where this one is a hand, almost 2 hands. But I liked the styling. I've been like I say, a sucker for the Tanto tip since the mid '80s, and I just couldn't leave the wakizashi on the shelf, as they say. And so, cold steel wakizashi. The handle does suffer a little bit from the fake wrap, but if you strategically pay attention to the hot spots, cut them down with a knife or sand them down with a sander. There's all the Dremel, whatever you need, but you'll find the hot spots very quickly, address them, and the handle becomes very comfortable. It's almost a lock-in. Your hand knows where to go. I didn't like this knife either. If modifications mean you didn't like it, then I didn't like it. The edge grind was thrower style. It was very low, just about there from the factory. Crappy V-edge, very steep. No fun at all. This would bounce off anything that you struck at, let's see, 45-degree angle or more. So as the angle got lower and lower, you're more obtuse, it would be a tendency to bounce off rather than dig in. And so because of my experience with the 1055, this 1055 I knew would support the edge, and so I've laid it back quite a bit. You can see that I've dramatically altered the angle. I started a little and I kept going until it would work here in this part of the world. This is a brush clearing monster. And if you're up against a knot on a pine tree, any of the trees that occur in my area of the woods, the yokote, the secondary tip, will really punch through. So if the flat edge is not doing the job, you just work out to the tip and use that secondary point to punch through whatever it is you're cutting into. There's no way to show that on camera. There it is, like that. This guy will punch through the knots or what have you that you might be trying to cut. I like the aesthetic, and of course you modify the back with a file so that it'll throw sparks from a ferro rod. With the modifications, spectacular bush tool. Otherwise, a bit of a mall ninja, I won't lie. You all are going to make those judgments anyway. But in this configuration, spectacular brush tool. And you're going to probably mod the edge of any cold steel machete you get because of the super acute, I would say, thrower style grind like these guys. It's just crazy steep so that you have edge protection rather than working surface. When I was ordering that machete, I was looking to round out my order so you get free shipping, and I stumbled upon I would say the most underrated knife in the cold steel lineup, and that is the Kudu. These are $12 in Canada, $9 in US. You can find them for $7 or $8 in some cases on Amazon. These are really fun. It's 4-inch blade. Where are you going to get a 4-inch blade for $9? That's made out of German steel. These are 4116. In any case, German steel. I went right to work modding this one because the blade is very much in the family of the Swiss Army knife. So it's a full flat with a secondary crappy V-edge. And so I laid that out quite flat. It's a very, very shallow Scandi. The edge retention on this is really nice, much better than my fancier, much more expensive SOG. Now, you could argue that the steel is better. I'm going to say the steel is better and that the heat treat is probably better. But this thing is just plain fun. You can see that it's a different style of lock. You have to lift the ring. The whole back of the knife is the spring. There are detents on the blade, and you have to lift the ring in order to release the blade. There are a series of ratchets as well, which you can see in here. If I could get the bolts apart, I would remove the ratchets so that it could be flicked open, but my bolts are Loctited at a biblical level, so they're never going to come out. I've sprayed them with sprays that has worked on other things, and they're just not coming out. So there's this series of ratchets. The only criticism I've heard for this is that it's difficult to close one-handed, but it really isn't. So if you have the knife in your hand, you can put your finger through the ring. The whole knife then goes into this position with the thumb and the fingers both exerting pressure while you pull on the ring. It's now unlocked. The whole thing goes in your pocket. And it makes a great fidget spinner. I'm not a bally guy. Sorry, never going to happen. I did cover the ring with heat shrink tubing just to make it a little bit more comfortable and black it out because it's tactical. Having the key ring on there looks cheap. Flat out. It's just really cheap. And the ring that you get from cold steel is rough on the inside, rough on the outside, and the tips are almost sharp. But great piece of steel. Mine's been modded. I buffed off the Kudu logos as part of zeroing out the knife, and then I like the brush look so much that I brushed everything else. Sandpaper. Pretty easy mod. Subsequent to that, this is not a knife, but it was a gift. While I was still working at Cabela's, somebody saw my Kudu and they said, oh, you need one of these because you got one of these. And so it is the knockoff Benchmade comb. The teeth are almost too sharp for brushing your beard, particularly if it's as fuzzy as mine is, but it is kind of cool. Bally comb. Bally's being prohib in Canada for no good reason because it's got to easily be the slowest knife in the world, but they are kind of fun and prohibs in Canada. So subsequent to that, I was on the interweb talking to a guy about the Cold Steel Recon 1 Micro, and I had said, well, you know, if I was going to buy it, I felt like the price was a little high, but if I was interested, what would the shipping cost? So he said, well, send me your address and I'll tell you what the shipping would cost. So I sent him my address, you know, tickled the keyboard and sent him my address. The next email I get from him is, it's shipped. So I hadn't paid for it, but it's shipped. Great. It was in the neighborhood of being too much for a used knife because I could almost have bought a new one for that price, but it's shipped. I paid him for it because, let's be honest, I'm not gonna have my reputation be ruined for $30. It was not in this rough shape because I've been using the crap out of this thing. This is the nicest piece of 8 CR13 me just make sure I'm getting that right. Sorry, AUS 8A that I've ever held, ever sharpened, ever worked with, period. And all I can say is I sharpen knives for people, spend a lot of time in the bush with knives that other people have chosen to bring into the bush. So you see a lot of different styles, things that you would never think to buy yourself, cheap stuff, expensive stuff. Edge retention is a big issue when you're building primitive shelters and creating fires. This thing is a machine. It's still a cheap knife. It's still AUS 8. So it's not a super steel. Don't get it twisted. But this thing's got ridiculous edge retention. It's just foolish how well this knife works. It's legal for airplanes in Canada because it's under 3 centimeters, which is mind-boggling to me, considering how powerful this blade is. I love that it's a Tanto. I like Tanto everything. Excuse me, if I could have all my fingers modified to be Tanto, I probably would. Like, it's just foolish how much I like Tantos. Little modifications I've made, of course. Polished edge. I ditched the secondary V-edge, which just opened up this thing's box cutting and package opening capability. It will absolutely take the splinters out of you, and frankly, it'll open you up so smoothly that you don't even know that it's happened until the day after when you're wondering why your skin hurts. A great piece of kit. Oddly enough, this is stronger than my former SOG Flash 2, which is my EDC, a much larger knife. This will hold the same amount of weight in a hang test from the end at just over 120 pounds on the triad lock. It's pretty sick. I ditched the thumb stud because you can open these without the thumb stud. The thumb stud was enormous on a knife this size. But great piece, and it is tiny. So glad Buddy What's His Name sent me this knife without asking me if I really wanted to buy it, because I never would have bought it otherwise. Super piece of kit. Everyday carry for sure. Whilst I was everyday carrying that one, I've of course got the Cold Steel Voyager with some minor modifications as well. Of course, you've got to fix the clip. So you can see I repaired the radius of the clip, laid it out a little bit, flattened the tip, lifted the clip just slightly off the scale so that it is clip capable. For whatever reason, when I removed the paint, because I wanted the aesthetic for the accessories to all be in the silver, I couldn't, after 3 tries, get the paint out of the Cold Steel logo, which is an incredible blessing because I would love to have the black in there, but I thought it would flake, so I made a real effort to get it out of there so it wouldn't flake. Hasn't flaked yet. That was 4 years ago that I stonewashed that. So you strip it with paint stripper, put it in a soda bottle half full of rocks and water, wrap the whole thing in 3 towels, and throw it in with your laundry for an hour. Stone wash. Again, I do find Cold Steel's thumb studs to be large, annoying, and not necessary, and polished out the edge. I stayed with the secondary V-edge because I like the factory look, but I put the strop on it a fair bit, just enough to really get rid of the factory bevel and polish it out. That's a hair popper for sure. And again, who doesn't love the Voyager Tanto Large? I love to have the XL because it's an XL, but the XL itself, the swoop of the blade seems a little silly out at the end. It doesn't carry the same aesthetic like the XL Recon 1. The Voyager blade doesn't carry that smooth, swooping, cutting-edge aesthetic all the way out to the edge of the 5-inch blade. Although, half the days of the week, I wish I'd bought the XL. So, if you're a guy that's on the fence and thinking, L for sure, maybe XL, buy the XL. I wish I had. Love this knife. CVS BD1. What are you going to say? It's killer. I've been carrying that for years, but always secretly in love with the Warcraft. And so, finally, I said to myself, you know what? The economy of, well, that'll be my little secret. But the economy of 20 says, you know, maybe you want to spend money on other things. Maybe even when you're 30, you might want to just save a few bucks and get a knife that's good enough, mod it up, and just enjoy it. But the economy of, well, you know, a beard that's this white and this long says, you know what, if you want it, save your pennies and get it. And so, Grail Knife, 13 TL, cold steel, Warcraft, 7.5. Of course, you got to do the fun things to the scabbard. So there's 20 feet of cord wrapped in a funky little pattern. Like I said, half because I got 20 feet of cord, half because looked cool. I also thought that it would be interesting to, because the knife is a fake Japanese design made in, I believe it's made in Taiwan, that it would be perfectly okay to put a fake Chinese coin on the wrap because it looks cool. So, fake, 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 fake. Welcome to the modern world. What isn't fake is the Secure X is awesome. It works fantastic in an inverted carry, which I've modded with leather. Just take notes, cold steel, this enormous piece of 1, 2, 3 layers of webbing compounded by the enormous snap, which backs up the impossibly thick and very durable Velcro. By the time you get all that under the belt of on your pants themselves, and then a backpack strap over top, it's super, super hot spot. So, super thin piece of leather, stitched in yourself. I'm sorry it's hideous, but it works amazing. Experiments. CPM 3V, super steel. Ridiculous blade length, 7.5 inch. 5 millimeters thick. G10 scales. Tapered so that because the tang is thinner at the tail to get the weight in the right spot. This thing checks all of my boxes. Like, can't even tell you how great this knife is. There's only a small amount of jimping. I'm not a jimping fan, so this is just perfect. It's got a look, it's got a feel, it locks up in your hand. The inverted is spectacular. It just feels great. This will knock the head off your fish. Super simple. You can split your kindling with this thing. Like, people say a Tanto tip doesn't have any place in the bush. Trust me, buddy. You are going to love what the Yakode does, clearing brush. You're going to love this extra capability of the Tanto tip to separate the bones and flesh when you're cleaning fish with this thing. It's just an absolute monster. I can't even tell you. I knew when I bought it I was going to use it, and it broke my heart a little bit to ruin the factory finish because these are so beautiful when they're brand new. It'd be nice to have one on the wall and one on your belt. This one being the one on your belt. But